All right, good afternoon,
Good af-
everybody. Um, the topic of today is quite a popular one. It's something that we hear every day. Inflation is not a new concept to majority of us. So I'll just get right into it. What does the concept of inflation or inflation rate entail? It's just basically continuous increase, right, in the price, general price level of goods and services within a particular economy. So what does that mean in simple terms? What you could buy at 10 naira yesterday, you are buying it at a higher price today. That's basically inflation. And this inflation has to be continuous. Take note of it being continuous. It's not just something that happens overnight. It's like a continuous process whereby you see changes, upward increases or upward trends in general prices of goods and services within an economy. I mean, this has a lot of negative impact, although there are some positives, but I feel personally, I feel like negatives, right, outweigh the positives. I mean, like if you look at inflation from the angle of the Phillips curve, where you have inflation and unemployment, you have like an inverse relationship, whereby you have inflation increasing and unemployment reducing. That's like a positive benefit. But like in the grand scheme of things and how it like affects people and their quality of life, you can see that inflation is more of a negative concept. So we can ask this question: what causes this increase? Like what can spur these general increases in prices of goods and services in an economy? I mean, there are quite a number of factors that can be considered, such as like the monetary policy of the economy, the money supply within the economy. I mean, like the way economics work, the way economics works, right? If you have like excess money chasing few goods, you have those goods will increase in price in order to balance out the money that's chasing them. Do you understand? Like if for Nigeria, for example, we have a lot of money in circulation, like our monetary policy, wow, flooding money. There's a lot of liquidity in the economy. So we can see that this has generated high levels of prices generally in the economy. I mean, like the monetary policy plays a very crucial role in controlling the inflation of an economy. Also, you have your fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is just basically saying, oh, the taxes, oh, the government expenditure within an economy. This is like a crucial factor that affects the level of prices in an economy. I mean, like prices of goods and services can be determined a lot by how government chooses to spend, where government chooses to invest in, and that's basically what your fiscal policy is talking about. And this one, I feel like everybody should already know this exchange rate. Exchange rate is a very key player in determining the price of goods and services. I mean, if you have, for example, now let's take Nigeria for example. We had our exchange rate between we had like 600, 700 in the past, like recent times, and now we have our exchange rates being like 800, 900,
900.
right? So the amount to which you could have bought something before in relative terms to naira has increased. Do you understand? That's a very typical example of how exchange rates can affect the level of prices and of goods and services in an economy. You also have some other exogenous factors, some little factors like you have supply shocks and all of that. Let's say in the case of earthquake or maybe a pandemic like we had in time of COVID, you can have prices of goods and services rise during those periods. And like you have a lot of other exogenous minor factors that we will not really consider, like weather, time, season, all of that, right? So like I feel like those are the major causes of inflation. So when you move to the types, right, you have a lot of I mean different types of inflation. You have demand pull, cost push rather. We have open inflation, we have repressed, we have hyperinflation, creeping inflation, moderate inflation. We have a lot, but like we're going to focus. Let's just focus more on the ones that affect the economy that are like have economic backings to them. You have your demand pull, cost push, hyperinflation, and creeping inflation. Let's just focus on that. What is demand pull inflation? It's just basically saying, oh, the aggregate demand in an economy outweighs the aggregate supply. I mean, like it's already self-explanatory. Say demand pull when you have more demand than supply. for a commodity, what will happen? The sellers of that commodity or the suppliers of that commodity will essentially increase their prices to gauge out or filter out the other buyers that may not be able to afford and sell to those that can afford it at the changed price. So that's just demand pull inflation. That's what the concept is saying. Then cost push inflation is more like an inverse of that, right? This has to do with cost of production. When there's an increase in cost of production and your aggregate supply as a seller, my cost of production has increased now and I cannot produce at optimal capacity anymore. I reduce my supply and my aggregate demand was not affected because their own cost of production, they don't have any visibility. So my aggregate demand was constant. You have the cost push inflation rather, sorry, cost push inflation because I'm not supplying at the equilibrium in which aggregate demand was equal to aggregate supply. My equilibrium has shifted as a supplier, right? So you have me increasing the prices of my goods in order to supply to those who are available to buy my commodity. That's just basically cost push inflation. Then hyperinflation is just saying, oh, inflation is happening at a very fast or rapid rate, while creeping is just saying it's moving at a slower rate. So I'll leave Faraday to take over from here.
Thank you so much for that, Jesse. Friday, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Can you
can
hear
hear
us?
you.
Okay. Sorry?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, yeah, so we're looking at introduction into inflation rates, meaning, types, and causes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, Jesse has spoken widely on the topic inflation, and I'm very sure inflation is one term that either you're familiar with economics or not, like everyone understands to a particular extent, right? So basically, when prices of good, you know, go higher than its actual value, you say the price is inflated, right? So basically, there are two types, two real types, right, or categories. You have the nominal inflation, right, and the real inflation also. But in today's world, they've broken it down to several times that Jesse mentioned. You have the hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is when your figures are has crossed the mark of 20%, right? So no, 30%, sorry. So you can say Nigeria is approaching, right, the benchmark of hyperinflation. We also have cost push inflation. That one is caused when the cost of production is very much expensive, right? Then in that instance, you producing something will be, the prices will be inflated. You have demand pull inflation. This happens where too much money is chasing fewer goods, right? If I'm selling bread, for instance, I'm the only person selling bread. Due to excess demand, I tend to increase my price in order to get more profit. So the inflation has happened in that time. So um, tailoring this into economics, right? Nigeria's economy is bedridden by inflation already, right? And this the fuel subsidy removal has even heightened it to a very alarming extent. Okay, to a very alarming extent, So um, what inflation naturally attacks in an economy, right, is the cost of what you call primary products, right? Mainly food, like food items. That's why one of the ways of measuring inflation in an economy is food basket price. I don't know if you've seen that anyway, right? So when there is an increase or a decrease in inflation, it primarily goes directly into your primary product, like maybe food or several other things, right? So because secondary products goes through a lot of processes, right? So it does not really have that much effect on secondary products like primary products. And inflation is a very key indicator when you're trying to look at the health status of an economy, right? As an investor, you would always look out for the rate of inflation, because inflation is the value of money today is different from the value of money yesterday. The value of money today is different from the value of money tomorrow. So if I'm investing $1 today, due to inflation, due to high inflation, I might get my returns on, let's say, 80 cents per dollar, and that's 20 cents loss, right? So I think inflation is one thing that we should really understand mainly, and it can also go to an advantage, right? as an investor, you could also leverage from the power of inflation if you have information, right? So if I get information before several other people that okay, maybe next week fuel price would, let's say, increase, by this week I would buy so much so much fuel already at a cheaper price, so by tomorrow I'll be selling at a more expensive price by increasing my profit, right? So inflation actually goes both ways, but mostly, like Jesse mentioned, it is a negative indicator, right? And it is something that has crippled economies before. I know the country with the highest inflation, I can't remember now. I think it's a Southern American country. Maybe is it Venezuela or something? I can't remember. Has over 1,000% inflation, over
Okay,
1,000. And
wow.
now you have Zimbabwe also
Zimbabwe.
having an alarming rate of inflation. Somalia also has an alarming rate of inflation, right? So these things are very key. Then for countries like maybe US and the rest, US has an inflation rate of about, I think, 3% thereabouts, because most countries, their yeah, national reserves is in US dollars. And why that is because the US dollar is a very stable currency, right? It's not really affected by inflation. So that's why you could also say the dollar demand in Nigeria would also cause an inflation in currency. So thank you very much, Christian.
Thank you so much for that, Friday. So, speaking on, because we're still going to stick on the practical aspect, well, I'm going to move to the practical aspect now, and I want you to kind of, like, call it, assess the prevailing inflation rates in this economy, the Nigerian economy, and like throw more light into okay the way forward to towards the reduction or other strategies regarding the bringing down of the inflation rate of this economy. So I'll start with Jesse first. Jesse, are you still with us?
All right.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Thank you. Um, okay, so inflation in Nigeria. Um, in Nigeria, everybody knows that we have a high level of inflation. Current um, Nigeria's current inflation rate is 24.0%.
wow.
24.08%. That is our inflation rate on paper. I'm a very practical person. This is not our actual inflation rate. Our inflation rate in real terms is higher than this because something that you could buy for, let's just take soft drinks, for example, now. Soft drinks about 2 years ago, last year, was about 100 naira.
100.
Soft drink now is 200 naira. So that's like 100% increase. Do you understand? So, like in real terms, because if we're bringing it down to like consumables and all of that, like Friday said, we're using the food basket. If you go to the market, tomatoes you could buy for 500 naira. Last 2 years is about 1,000 naira now. So inflation is increasing rapidly in Nigeria. I'm sure we're already on a hyper level at the moment, like regardless of what the data says. But I mean, the data still suggests a high level of inflation because like 24% inflation is quite
Still
high
high.
relatively. Exactly. So like, if we want to assess the trends, I mean, like in 2020 we had an inflation rate of 18.85%, and it has consistently been increasing since then. I mean, inflation rate currently is our highest inflation rate since 2005. So like you can see that there has been upward increase, like upward movement in the level of goods and services in Nigeria generally. So the question we ask ourselves as a nation is, why do we have this trend? Why do we have our prices or our commodities, essential commodities for that matter, like increasing in relative price compared to like former prices or compared to international standards and all of that? So what factors are contributing to this? The first and major factor we have is our exchange rate. If we assess our exchange rate trends, you can see that the naira has been declining in value over the years, right? We have had the naira come from 100 naira to about 900 naira,
900.
which it is now. I think during Jonathan's time, we were seeing the exchange rates within 100 to 100 naira or so, and everybody was complaining at that time that exchange rate is high, exchange rate is high. Now, exchange rate has moved from 100 naira to, let's just say, 900 naira, 880. So that you can see that the exchange rate in Nigeria, the exchange rate issue is a very chronic issue, and exchange rate as a variable on its own is something that is very significant in addressing or assessing inflation, right? It cannot be left out. You cannot call inflation and not put into cognizant exchange rate. So we have had high levels of, low levels of exchange rate relatively to other countries, and this has been a very impactful cause of our high levels of inflation in Nigeria. I mean, we also have the demand pull inflation, right? Because the way inflation works, while rather as prices are increasing, they are increasing as a result of a cause, right? We have the demand pull inflation where demand is higher than supply. We are not a really productive economy. We don't have satisfactory commodities produced within our economy to be able to foster or sustain the level of demand coming from within the economy. We have a large population of about, I think, 250 million or so, like, let us say, give or take, Nigerians, and we don't have enough productive capacity to feed, to house the basic necessities of life. We do not have sufficient production or sufficient domestic production to fund this. So the Nigerian economy has actually been ravaged by this demand pull inflation. And
Mm.
inflation is something that goes both ways if you want to consider it from the cost push aspect. If you want to analyze inflation as a cost push factor, as inflation increases, the cost push inflation, right, on its own, the cost of production is going to increase,
Okay.
in turn causing another inflation, like another cost push inflation. So it's a cycle effect. I don't know if you get what I mean.
Yes.
Like inflation is increasing, right? Therefore, the cost of production is increasing, thereby resulting in another increase in, you get what I mean? Like another cost push inflation. Exactly. So like it's just a cycle that will be moving in Nigeria. So like these these factors, demand pull and cost push, are very important factors that we have to consider, and they are major causes of inflation in Nigeria. Also, we have a very high level of money supply within the Nigerian economy, like I said earlier, whereby we have a lot of money chasing few goods. I mean, like if you look at our currency, I'm hearing of a new policy that they want to implement, something called I think it's like a currency change, right? Where we're going to change like 1,000 naira to 100 naira. I don't know if you guys heard of that.
I've not heard of that, but I'll research.
Is a new policy. Like we are going to like reduce our naira in terms of let me just put it for example, 1,000 naira can just be 100 naira
Now,
on
wow.
paper. Yes. So something like that. I don't know how well that monetary policy is going to affect the economy, but like it's something I'm going to definitely research on also. So, but that's just the peripheral idea of what they want to do. So we have like monetary supply, money supply issues where we have a lot of money. I mean, our currency, we have 1,000 naira. The US does not even use their $1,000 note. The highest note is I don't think they have it. They don't even have a $1,000 note.
I
I think
doubt
they
they have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100 is a.
Yeah,
100 is
100,
the
100
highest.
the highest. Yeah.
Exactly, 100 is the highest. So $100 is the highest. We use 1,000 naira. So like these factors, I mean, like it's definitely a monetary supply issue. Like we have a lot of money chasing few goods in our economy, and also for Nigeria as a case study, we have this subsidy removal issue. I mean, fuel is something that once the price of fuel increases, a lot of other things increase because fuel affects transportation of food, affects transportation of services. So what does inflation mean? Increase in price of goods and services. So like when you have increase in fuel, transportation cost has increased. So the let's say a woman selling tomato, for her to transport her tomatoes from point A to point B has increased in terms of price. She also has to increase the cost at which she's selling in order to balance out and still make profit. That is just stating inflation. So this subsidy removal, which has increased the price of petrol in our nation, Nigeria, is a very significant cause of inflation in Nigeria. So yeah, that's it for the causes. Let me leave Farley to expatiate or elaborate more on some other causes of inflation.